Hey y'all, and welcome to the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. I'm Susan, your hostess. As you can tell, I have a lot of sinus drainage going on right now, so my voice is off. But I went into my freezer this morning, and my dinner rolls are soft. This package is semi-frozen, but it's soft on one side. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to make bread today with this, and that's going to be our hashtag freezer clean out 24, and it is hosted by me, the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. It is an open collaboration. Anyone can join in. It ends December the 30th, 2024. There will be a summary video on around January the 2nd of 2025. So the instructions on here says to prep your pan and plastic wrap with cooking spray. I don't use cooking spray. Let rise 3 to 5 hours until doubled, and preheat your oven to 350 and bake for 15 to 20 minutes. Cool and serve. So we're going to probably bake this in loaf pans, and you can make pizza crust out of this also. This is the Rhodes brand dinner rolls. We like this brand. There's the label. It's 48 ounces. It has 36 rolls per package. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle some all-purpose flour onto my sideboard here, and we're going to get all these dinner rolls out of the bags. As you will see, they are quite stretchy because they have defrosted. And I'm having a little bit of a voiceover on this video. My husband's home. He has fallen and injured his kneecap and his right hip a little bit. He's bruised. He's okay. But we're going to get him checked out thoroughly by the doctors this week. So I'm going in here to open up the second bag. And y'all, we had our birthdays this past weekend. We're super, super happy that that's past us. We didn't do a whole lot, but we did go out to dinner to eat with some friends. That was fun. So anytime that you've got a freezer that has thawed out rolls and you're getting to them and they're still partially frozen, the dough is still good. So you can do this and salvage your dough. I'm going to add a little more flour on top, and we're going to start kneading this. And you're going to see that I'm pushing, and then I'm pulling it back towards me, and I'm working both pieces separately, and then I'm going to put them together. Now this is 1.5 bags of dinner rolls here. So that's quite a bit of dinner rolls that would have gone bad otherwise. And I can actually take the bread once it is cooked and cooled and bag it up and put it in the freezer and save it for another day. So that's a good thing. So I'm flipping it over, and you're going to see me begin to crimp and tuck in the edges a little bit. It's quite a stiff dough when you do it this way. I'm going to get my scraper spatula thing, and we're going to cut this into 4 sections in just a moment. And I have pulled out 4 of my bread pans, and I have oiled them and gotten them prepared for the bread. So that's already done. It's prep work that's already done. And I used just an all-purpose vegetable oil to do that with. It's on the counter there. So just a little bit of prepping here to get my dough ready to go into the bread pans. We want them to be kind of uniform in size. So 2 of my bread pans are a little bit smaller, and 2 of them are larger. So the larger pieces I will put into the larger bread pans. Now I'm going to knead this again and kind of get it into a rectangular shape. And then we're going to, again, roll and crimp and tuck in the ends. So once I form it in there, you'll see me bring it over to you and show you what it looks like in the bread pan. It's not touching all the edges. So we're going to continue to do this with all 4 pieces, and this is actually a very relaxing thing to do. If you've got any kind of carpal tunnel or something, you might want to try working with a little bit of bread dough to help build those tendons and muscles back up. So there's the second one in the pan. This is a larger piece, I do believe. So I'm stretching the dough, and then I'm going to tuck it into the middle. Add a little more flour if it gets sticky on you. There we go, getting it crimped in there, and then I'm going to roll over the second side, push that in, and flip it over and tuck my ends in. Had something stuck on the top of that, but that's okay, we got it off. So now we have our third pan with our dough. Here we go for the fourth and final piece of dough. So if you had 2 full bags, you probably would need 6. I would say 6 or maybe 7 loaf pans, depending on how big of a loaf that you're wanting to make. Or if you're one of the lucky ones that has a full-size loaf pan, you probably would need at least 3. So there's the last one. We're going to get the counter cleaned up, and we're going to get these covered up. Now what I do is I will cover these with a floured, clean hand towel. A lot of people will use the plastic wrap, but I don't go that route. I think this works even better, and the bread doesn't seem to stick to it. So I'm going to flip this over, and we're going to get this floured up a little bit. Doesn't take a lot of flour, just enough to kind of get that cloth where it's not going to stick to your bread. And that one will cover 3 of the loaf pans. And now I'll pull out another towel here in just a moment. And this one I'm going to fold in half since it's only going to cover the 1 pan. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to add just a little bit of flour to the surface of that towel, rub it in, and then cover the 4th bread pan. And that's what it looks like, y'all. Okay, I've moved them over onto my counter, and they have been rising. I actually put some water on to boil, and that kind of added some extra moisture in the air and got that bread rising a little bit faster. So there it is. You see how much it's risen in the 2 larger pans compared to the 2 smaller pans. And I'm using a clean razor blade, and I'm just going to slice down the middle of my loaves. That will allow it to expand without bubbling up. Sometimes you get those air bubbles underneath the surface of your bread, and this kind of eliminates that. So those will rise up while they're baking, and I shouldn't have big air pockets. Okay, next we're going to add an egg wash. It's 1 egg scrambled with a little bit of water added to it to thin it out. And I'm just going to brush this all over the tops of my loaves. This will give a soft top to my loaves. And they look like they're going to be beautiful loaves of bread. And I didn't have to do all the work to get there. So that was a nice convenience. So if you're in a hurry one night, you want to have fresh bread, you start this in the morning. And you can just pop them in the oven. And they'll be done in about 20 minutes. I start them out at 400 degrees and then lower my heat to about 300 to finish them off. Once the tops are browned, you want the internal temperature to be 190 degrees Fahrenheit. That is usually a good test that your bread is done at that temperature. It depends on the bread. For these loaves, it was about 200 when I took them out of the oven, so they went in a little bit longer, but that's okay. They didn't overcook because I had lowered the heat. So there's the second loaf, and I'm going to work on this third loaf. You can see how beautiful that looks. It's going to give it a little bit of a sheen to it. And this third loaf is really proved very, very well. We're going to get this egg wash on there. And I do take my time when I'm doing the egg wash. You do not want it on there thick. You want to have it on there kind of thin. So it doesn't have just egg baked on top of your bread. You want it a thin coat of the egg wash. I'm going to get the other side done. You want to make sure you're getting all the creases and crevices, that everything's covered. This will keep your bread tender. And we're on to the last loaf. Now this loaf didn't proof as well as I was hoping it would, but it did well in the oven. You will see when it comes out in a few minutes, it did very, very well. And I'm just going to get this egg wash on there quickly, and as I'm doing these, I'm actually putting them into the hot oven that is at 400 degrees Fahrenheit to start the baking process. And you do want to watch your bread while it's baking. Once the tops were browned, I actually took the loaves out, moved my rack all the way to the bottom, and put it on the other rack that was in my oven, turning my temperature down to 300 degrees Fahrenheit to allow it to finish the baking process. Here are the loaves coming out of the oven. Isn't that a beautiful loaf? Some of the other loaf actually stuck to the side of the pan there. We're going to see how this second loaf does. This is the biggest loaf out of all of the loaves. And I'm going to use my little thermometer here and check the temperature. And it is about 190 degrees. So we know that this loaf is done. We don't have to check the rest of the loaves. There's the third loaf. And my last loaf. We're going to allow these to cool on the counter for a few minutes on a rack, and then we will remove them from the bread pans. But before we do that, we're going to brush them with some melted butter. This will actually finish off the soft top of your loaf of bread, and it will remain soft, and you will have a beautiful slice of bread when you cut into it, and it will have a little bit of that buttery flavor. It's just so, so good. Y'all, my house smells amazing right now because of the bread baking. this is kind of a treat for us around the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. I don't do a lot of bread baking around here, but occasionally I like to have some homemade, fresh from the oven, hot, piping hot bread. It reminds me of my dad taking me down to Hart's Bakery down in Memphis, Tennessee. When I was a child, he would take me down there and we would buy a loaf of bread and bring it home fresh out of the oven, and it would feed me, my siblings, my mom, and my dad, and it was always a nice treat to have. So I actually have gone over these loaves twice with the butter. I didn't want to leave any butter in that bowl, and they will have a nice buttery top on there. You want to make sure that you're getting all of the exposed areas of your bread when you're doing this step. And there's the loaves out of the bread pans, and I'm actually going to slice that big loaf. We're going to move that other loaf over and use this little bread slicer thing. And this bread is still piping hot, y'all. But I want it to get some of this good homemade bread while it's hot and get it buttered. There is that crumb. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful. We're going to cut another slice off of here, and I'm going to get those buttered with some of that homemade butter and use my little butter crock that sits out so the butter is already soft. Don't have to do a lot of work to get that butter on that bread, but this second piece did not want to cooperate. The bread is just so hot. I had to turn it to the side to finish cutting that slice of bread. So that bread is just so soft and so good. Let me get the butter. And I'm going to put this on with a little butter knife that I have. And get that spread on that bread. It just is so, so good. It's just melting right into that bread. Let's get that heel piece, which is my favorite piece on a hot loaf of bread. It's not necessarily my favorite piece when I'm making sandwiches, but I do like that hot heel of the bread. And so we've got our bread ready to go. Thank you for watching, and may you be fully blessed. This is hashtag Freezer Cleanout 24, hosted by the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. Open collaboration. Get involved.